The cross. On that cross, there was love for me. We have in studio today a mental health professional. No, she's not just a mental health professional, she is a counselor. She's a doctor. Her name is Dr. Marjorie McWilliams. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Marjorie McWilliams. Dr. McWilliams, she has a bachelor's of arts in art and art history from, should I say the year? She
Sure, why
went to the California State University 1974. She graduated. She has a Christian counseling degree from the National Christian Counselors Association from 2016. She is a licensed she's a licensed pastoral counselor since 2017. She has a master's of arts in clinical Christian counseling from 2017. She has a doctorate Ooh, in Christian counseling. Yes, she's a doctor. She has been practicing privately since 2016. Her client is primarily women, but she takes men as well. Her practice is Christian based, meaning she believes that the Bible is divinely inspired and that it is a powerful tool to teach, instruct, and correct. She believes that God was, is, and will always be in the business of healing his people. This means that with prayer and discernment given by the Holy Spirit, we can see God's purpose spiritually, physically, and mentally. If I fail to mention it, she is also my own counselor. Yes, I've sat on her couch and I found her to be superb. I got freedom from my sessions, and so I felt it was necessary to bring her, especially with some of the prayer requests that I've been getting. I felt it was necessary to bring a professional on to help you. I want to say good afternoon to you, Dr. Marjorie McWilliams. How are you today?
I am so blessed. I'm so blessed to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, Denise.
You're most welcome. And if I fail to mention it, she's located right here in California, in Sacramento, California. So, Dr. Marjorie, I've already asked you how you're doing, and I'm glad you're doing well. So, I want to know why Christian counseling for you?
Oh, that's a great question. I knew that when I was going after this practice, which the Lord had asked me to do, there was no way that I could go to a secular university and go through a secular program. In the state of California, now each state has its own set of rules and regulations, but in the state of California, it's actually against the law for me to talk about my religious faith unless the client brings it up. Then I can talk about it. And there's no way that I can do this kind of a healing ministry without talking about God, because he is the ultimate healer. And so I chose this path. And it's really interesting when I get together with colleagues that are in the secular world, they're really fascinated about the fact that I chose this path. And they'll say, "Why didn't you go to the University of San Diego? Why didn't you go to Stanford? Why didn't you go get your degree here and there?" And I just tell them, first of all, Christians in particular are a peculiar people. We have a peculiar set of guilt issues. We have a peculiar set of standards and ethics that we live by. And who better to counsel those people than someone who is in the faith as well? And they really enjoy that quote that we're peculiar people, because they will readily agree that we are peculiar. So it takes a Christian to be able to minister to Christians, and that's my whole emphasis. And it's what God called me to. And so I had to take a different path than the standard path.
Okay. Awesome. What can our listeners expect from, calling in from a session with you, from just talking to you on this program?
Well, of course, God is able to do all things, and it is possible to get healing instantly. But I would generally say that what a listener is going to expect is just to get a feel and a taste for what counseling is about. And hopefully, they will take it to another professional and seek out extensive help. In other words, it takes more than a minute or two to fix an issue that's been with you for months, even years, even a lifetime. So I would hope that it would inspire people to go and seek out more professional help.
Great. I want to know what areas of counseling can persons call in with?
Any area.
Any area. Awesome.
Nothing's off limits.
So you heard it there, listeners, that any area that you're struggling with, any area that you need to talk about, the doctor is here to assist you and to guide you with tips and advice.
Most of counseling is actually asking questions and listening. Active is listening is what they call it. And so most of a session is me listening actively to what the client is saying and then asking questions and more questions and more questions because we find that most of the time the clients actually know the answers to their problems. They just need to talk it through.
What would you say to someone who might be scared to call? Or should I answer that one? Because I was scared to be on your couch.
Were you scared?
Yes, I was.
Why were
It
you
is
scared?
it is not the norm, it's not our culture to be in counseling, so I didn't know what to expect, and I thought it would have been invasive, but I was pleasantly surprised that I was able to work through my issues,
I think
my
that
deep issues.
I think that's really, really common that clients feel anxious, especially the first couple of sessions, because they've never either they've been to counseling and it's backfired and been horrible, or they have come expecting that all kinds of demons are going to erupt, and sometimes that happens, or they just don't know what to expect, and I have had clients hate me and they've projected onto me all of their fears and anxiety, and that's all right. I can take it. There have been clients who've absolutely fallen in love and don't ever want to leave my house. It's just all over the board, and we just roll with it and deal with one small piece at a time.
So I'm gonna ask you this question, what if you don't like your counselor?
That happens. And if that happens, this is business as well as mental health. It's a mental health business. And if there just is not that chemistry, then they are free to find another counselor or I can refer them out to other counselors. You really have to find the one that you gel with. And that's so important that you can trust your counselor, that you feel like they are skilled and professional. And if there isn't that trust, then it's really important to seek someone else. And I can either refer them out or they are free to find their own.
Alrighty. I don't have a lot of questions for you, or I know I've asked a lot already. Even though I say I don't have a lot, I've asked a lot already. Is there anything that you want to ask or regarding the expectations, or is there anything that you want to ask me even about my session that I did with you?
What did you love about it?
I love what I got from it. Freedom.
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 It wasn't instantaneous, was it?
It was not instantaneous. I did several sessions with you And it could not be instantaneous because this was something that I was carrying from I was 14 or 15 years old when my sister was murdered. I held on to that pain for a very long time, not knowing how to let it go. And I suffered in trauma for a while. And the other issues that we worked out too that I was carrying for a very, very long time, childhood trauma and stuff like that. So it wasn't instant, but it was freeing.
You know, Denise, you also came expecting. And when my clients come expecting to be healed, they receive. It didn't take long, and your trauma was deep. And the 3 or 4 sessions that we had, so much good work was done because you were expecting to hear from the Lord. You were expecting good work to happen, and it did.
Yeah. I also did my homework. So apart from being in your sessions, whatever I got from you when I came home or even on the way home, I started putting them into practice. I started, you know, talking to the Lord about what direction He wanted me to go with this, or
Yeah,
sometimes it requires coming home to cry.
for
But
sure.
whatever it is that was required after my session, I did it. I did the work that was necessary to free me because I
Right,
needed that freedom.
right. And I
Yeah.
should probably also say here that I myself, before I became a pastoral counselor, I had and still occasionally have depressive and anxiety issues, and to the point that for on 3 different occasions I've been hospitalized in psych hospitals for
Mhm,
depression and anxiety issues.
mhm.
So that paved the way for me. I learned so much being the recipient of good therapy and bad therapy. I've had 4 therapists in my life, and every good therapist has a therapist. And I have to say, I have a therapist right now because the load and the burden is great doing this kind of a profession. So, for myself, like you, Denise, I went to the therapists expecting to be healed. I went to the therapist hungry to be well mentally, and I received it, and I did the homework, and I showed up at those sessions with my questions, and I put in the good work, and as a result, I was able to turn what was meant to kill me into a fabulous ministry for the Lord. Isn't that the best revenge we can get on Satan? Is to take what he meant to kill us or to keep us bound, which for me was depression and anxiety, to take that and look, now I am on the other end of it, encouraging my clients with depression, anxiety issues, saying, I know exactly what that feels like. I've been there. Sometimes I'm still there. These these exercises that I'm giving you work because I use them on myself and with myself every day. It somehow has given me more credentials to add to my resume that I myself have been to those dark places and have survived and come on the other side of it.
There's a saying that we have in one of the prayer teams that I'm a part of: the healed become the healer.
Ah,
And I found that to be true because since I've sat on your couch, I've had so many persons to pray for who has been in my shoe. And had I not been to counseling, believe you me, not only would I have broken down with these cases, I wouldn't know how to pray. So I'm encouraging somebody today to get free. The number to call is 825-343-4486. You can go ahead with your calls. The doctor is in. If you just want to welcome her, you can go right ahead and do that. She's here to take your issues, your concerns, whatever it is you're going through that you want to talk to her about. She's here. She's willing. It's free. I had to pay.
can I ask you another question, Denise?
Go right ahead.
What was your least favorite part of the experience?
Remembering all that I went through. Um, I had buried it so much. having to bring this to the forefront was not easy. It was not the easiest moment. And I literally felt physical pain while doing this. So I must say that just to bring back everything to the forefront of my memory that I had tried so hard to bury, even though it was killing me, the weight of it was killing me. That was the hardest part.
Something interesting about that, it's not always necessary to go back and relive a trauma. Most of the time it is, but there are ways to work around that. So if you've had an extraordinary trauma happen in your life, you can find a therapist who won't insist on taking you back there. There are ways to go around that so that the process of the brain of remembering is released in a different using different techniques, if I may say. In your case, it was important to go back and relive not every single detail, but some of the parts. The process of releasing traumas is very it's fascinating because our brains are exquisitely created by God to protect us. And we have the ability within our marvelous brains to take traumatic memory and hide it right in the center of our brain in the amygdala. And as we can handle it, little bits of it are released. I think that those people who are listening who have had trauma know what we're talking about. A little memory is released. Oh, 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 yes, I do remember that. And then a little later, another little memory will be released. And eventually, you're able to you either suppress it completely, which is a technique, or little bits are released through your life, and then you're eventually able to deal with it. So there are different ways of going about releasing that trauma. And in your case, the way the Lord instructed me to help you release it was just as it unfolded.
Yeah. There was a major unfolding for me because I went to Jamaica on vacation and I learned new things that I did not know about because I believe my family was protecting me because I was a child. So coming back with this was heavy for me. So in order to get you to even understand what I was going through, I had to share because it was immediate. Yeah. Want to remind you that you can call Dr. Marjorie. WhatsApp number 825-343-4486. Don't be afraid to call. Remember, I tell you it's free. 825-343-4486. Go ahead and call. I'm seeing some text messages, but I want you to call. She's here. She's
I love
willing to talk to you.
I love talking to people. I love it. It's what I do.
So while we wait on the phones to ring, how do you sometimes when I get some things to pray for, I realize that they're heavy for me. How does a therapist but you said a therapist has a therapist. Okay. So I just wanted to know, how do you offload?
That's a really good question. Um, the the Lord has taught me through these years how to maintain what they call a professional distance. So when I'm dealing with a client, there's sort of a psychological barrier or boundary that I put up between myself and that person so that I am just observing rather than absorbing. Uh, but it's almost impossible sometimes not to absorb the pain that I hear coming from a client. In which case, I do, of course, a lot of praying and releasing that way. I garden. I have a beautiful garden that I can go in and dig and rearrange plants. I have to be out in my yard. I exercise. I play tennis. Um, I go to the gym. Pretty much anything that is totally different than the counseling situation is what I do to download or detox, shall we say.
Gotcha. So I we have a caller. This is the Heart of the Matters with Dr. Marjorie. Thank you for calling.
Hi. So I want to say
Hold on
welcome.
1 second. Let me just make sure that the doctor is able to hear you.
Yes, I heard perfectly.
Wonderful. Go right ahead. You don't
Okay, I'm
have to
saying
say your name. You don't have to identify yourself unless you want to.
okay, so I'm saying welcome.
Thank you.
This is a welcomed program. My question, because I have a how do you handle fear of a person? So much so that if you have a conversation with the person, you go into overthinking, you become absolutely fearful.
Well, my first question to you would be, is this a family member?
A family member, and you've had bad experiences with the person, not physical, but more so mental.
Can you give me an example? What was the conversation about? The last time you were with this person and you had that overwhelming fear happen, what were you talking about?
Life issues with regular somebody the person's displeasure about something. The person tends to raise voice, the person tend to gaslight. So you remove yourself from the person's presence, but when you do no contact, but when you do communicate with the person, after you talk to them, you're an absolute mess.
So it sounds like you have done a little bit of research on the narcissistic personality.
Yeah, because I didn't understand what was happening, so I started to research.
Yes. Um, is this fear? Do you think it's the Lord giving you some discernment about this person?
I don't know.
Well, some see the confusion with fear is when is this from the Lord and when is this from the enemy? And so this is a pretty complex question. Do you feel like the Lord is putting that fear within you, or do you feel like that is a dark kind of a fear that might not necessarily be from the Lord?
Yeah, I think it's a dark kind of fear.
Aha. And how often do you have to have contact with this person?
Not often,
Well, if
not often at all. But when uh, we're kind of at a what should I call it, separation kind of thing, and so you feel like okay, you should try again, but the thought of trying, you go into overthinking. You start to remember stuff. You start to feel like no, I can't do this, and so you're wondering, is it that I'm the problem, or is there at some point you start to wonder, is there really a problem? Am I creating this problem? It's a mess.
right. It is, this is one of the things that's gonna come up, Denise. It's very difficult, when I can't see the person that I'm talking to. But there's just so much here I would like to unpack, and we don't have an hour and a half to unpack it. I'd love to ask you questions about this person, but let's just for a moment assume that this person might have narcissistic tendencies. Let's just assume that. I don't know if that's true or not, but in that case, there's something about them that's deficient. There is a lack of a sense of completeness of self. And when they are with you, that fear that you're feeling is their way of making themselves feel better or powerful.
Mm,
Have you sensed that with this person?
absolutely.
Okay. So my best advice, and one of the things I deal with a lot with my clients, is with women, and I help them escape narcissistic abuse. And one of the things you used some wonderful terms about, gaslighting. So you know a little bit about this. But
Yeah. Okay.
is what I teach them to do is observe rather than respond. When you're with them and they start,
That for a period of time. I did that for a period of time in the latter part of before I decided to separate.
uh-huh,
I did that. I observed behaviors because, as I said, I did my research.
yes, it
I
sounds like,
went and I listened to stuff and I read stuff. So
yeah,
that's how I know about no contact. That's how I know about not responding. That's how I know about wall, what do you call that wall thing? That's how I know about those things
that's
because
very good
I didn't
because
understand what was happening. And when I started to listen to these things and I realized, oh, this is what I'm dealing with.
very
But
good.
then here's the other question.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can answer this, but I'll still ask it. Would God send you back into that situation if you came out of it?
That's a really good question. Sometimes. Sometimes. I have had women who have felt like it was, for this moment in time, most important that they return to this relationship, but I teach them there are big boundaries that need to be established to protect yourself, and it's good and right to protect yourself. And so I teach them how to return to the situation, but with new boundaries. Boundaries that keep the bad out and the good in. And in setting those boundaries, they've just had a sense of empowerment. So sometimes, yes, people are called to go back, sometimes no. And I can't advise on that. It has to be up to the client to make that decision, and
Yeah.
whatever their decision is, I support that. But a really important thing for you when you do have contact with this person, when they're in that process of instilling fear within you, ask yourself the question, "What does this tell me about him?"
And sometimes the person doesn't even have to speak.
Right, they're good.
Sometimes it doesn't
They're
even have
good
to
at this,
speak,
aren't
just
they?
to know that I may have to communicate with the person. Like if I have to communicate with them about something tomorrow, I'm a mess today. I'm a mess today. I start to overthink. What's the conversation going to be? What's the response maybe like? Oh, it's awful. It's awful. It's awful. It's
Is it
awful.
possible, and this sounds so simple, so forgive me, I don't mean uh, sound trite here, but is it possible to replace those, "What's gonna happen if" questions with statements about who you are and who God says you are? Replace those, scary questions with, "You know what? I am blessed. I'm overtaken with blessings. I'm the head and not the tail. I'm above and not but beneath. I am God's beloved. I am the apple of his eye. I am set free. I have everlasting life. I'm free from condemnation." You start replacing what God
Okay.
said over you for those questions of worry, and you begin to build up yourself with this holy faith. Is that possible for you to do?
I could give it a try, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because I'm fine. I'm fine everywhere else. I'm fine with everything. It's just that one person. I am just an utter mess when it comes to that person.
They have very skillfully convinced you that you need to be afraid of them, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So my best advice at this point is to replace those fearful thoughts with thoughts about who God says you are.
Okay.
and that
Right.
you are more than a conqueror. You have the mind of Christ. You're a member of Christ's body. You're a new creature. You're an ambassador for Christ.
Yeah.
And limit your contact as best you can. Limit your contact, because that
Amen.
person feeds on making you fearful. That is what they call
Yeah.
supply. Narcissists must have supply, and that's what makes them feel better about themselves, is being able to instill the
Yeah.
fear within you, and you don't wanna contribute to that. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult.
It is. It is. It is. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. I hope it's helpful.
I have many more questions, but I'll stop here for now.
You can squeeze one more in.
Mm, okay. What if you try to tell the person that something is wrong with you? You are not acting Christ-like, you are not, and the person turns it around
They always
to make
will.
it seem as if you are judging and you are the one who is self-righteous.
That's how they roll. And it's
Mm.
almost impossible to get a true narcissist to go to counseling, because they don't believe there's anything wrong with them. It's you. It's your problem. You're the one that's
But
making
how
an
do
issue
you
out of
go
this,
back to
right?
that though? How do you
What's
go
that?
back to the thought of going back scares me to death. The thought of it, I'm saying, God, I don't, is this my mind telling me that you're saying this, or are you saying this? Because the thought of it scares me to death. I
Yeah.
don't know. Okay, I'll try what you said.
Yeah, it's
That's
you
where that is.
you're not going to change them. And
Mm,
they are always gonna take what you have said and turn it around to make you the crazy one. So my best
mm,
advice is for
can
you
I
to
tell
build
you?
so my best advice is to build yourself up from within, and limit your
Yeah,
exposure as best you can, and
yeah.
always observe rather than respond. There's some really
Mm.
wonderful people on, YouTube. Meredith Miller is one. Um, oh my goodness, what's the other? Well, Meredith Miller, let's
I
start
started listening to Shanine, what's her name? Shanine. Oh, this Christian. She's a Christian. Meg G.
there.
Shanine Meg G.
Uh,
I
I
she
don't
I've listened to her
recognize
pretty much.
Meredith
I
Miller
started
is not a
I
Christian,
started
but
listening to I started
Meredith
listening to a lady, but I stopped because I didn't like the direction that she was going in, so
okay.
I
Meredith
stopped.
Miller is not a Christian, but she is very knowledgeable about narcissistic abuse, and she has many,
I'll
many
look into
videos
that.
on YouTube, and, uh, pray as you listen, and I think that will help you a lot. It'll give you lot more insight into how she personally has dealt with narcissistic abuse in her life. Lisa Romero, that's the name of the other woman. She also is not a Christian, but she's a life coach, and she has a lot of just excellent educational videos on YouTube about narcissistic abuse.
Lisa, what? Can you repeat?
Lisa Romano, Romano.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for calling.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for calling. Have a wonderful
Bye.
evening.
You too.
So the number to call is 825-343-4486. Let's get to the heart of the matter. 825-343-4426. Dr. Marjorie,
You're what?
I was
You're
going to
what?
play music, but I realized that I can't do that because of the YouTube restrictions. But
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay.
right, I wanted to ask you though if it's okay for us to go on a little more until 1 o'clock. Is that okay with you?
That's fine with me.
Okay. So, listeners, you have until 1 o'clock. The doctor is in. We have another caller. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the Heart of the Matter with Dr. Marjorie.
Hello, good afternoon, Sister Denise.
Good afternoon to you.
This is Sister Marjorie, and I just got to say hi and how are you doing?
I am good, thank you. We have Dr. Marjorie live in studio. She's here to deal with
Yes,
mental health issues, so you can say hello to her as well.
yes. Repeat the name for me again.
Dr. Marjorie.
Okay, Dr. Marjorie, good afternoon, and how are you doing? You are doing a wonderful program, and I am here on YouTube listening to you all.
Thank you so very much.
Okay, all right. God bless you as I continue to say.
Alrighty, have a wonderful evening. The number to call is 825-343-4486. Let's get to the heart of the matter. Let's get those traumas that you've been carrying for years and years and years, those pains that you've gone through that you don't know what to do with. Let's get to them. 825-343-4486. So, Dr. Marjorie, let's talk about me being on your couch again.
Yes. It's always open for you, Denise. Anytime you want to come back.
I want to talk about the fact that my inspiration for doing this was in January when we had the series of storms back to back, and I felt that my peace was threatened. What I want the listeners to know is that because I was on your couch, your door was always open to me. So not only with the storms, but even doing this program and the constant challenges I had with even when you were supposed to start in February and the system went down the day after Pastor Jesse was on. It was very challenging for me, you know. So sometimes we think that it's only the big things that we have to bring to the table of counseling, but there are some little things, some niggling things that that can upset the apple cart, you know. I
Yes,
mean, who would
absolutely.
have thought that someone coming from Jamaica would be bothered by a storm? We see this all the time.
Well,
But
yes. And speaking of little things, um, sometimes I have clients who come and they just want to talk.
mm,
And they'll just start in and just start talking about their lives, and it's not exactly trauma. They just want to be heard. And in this day and age, I don't know how it is in Jamaica, but in the United States, people just aren't listening to each other. And it's a matter of, like I said at the beginning of the show, it's active listening.
yeah.
It's looking at the client eye to eye and sometimes knee to knee on the couch and just paying attention while they tell their story. We don't do that very well. How is it in Jamaica? Are people telling their stories in Jamaica?
We do tell our stories, but I'm not sure we're telling it to the right persons because it's one, counseling is a bit expensive, and two, it's not the culture to go to counseling. So I remember, I'm gonna give you an example with my sister's passing. When I think it was 20 years later, and the young man was seeking parole. When I left work the day, I was a mess. I broke down crying. I didn't know what to do with this. And I asked the parole, the parolee who called, the young lady who was administering it, where can I go to get counseling? She said, I don't know. I asked her, is this what you normally do? She just said yes. And the only thing she left and said, you should get counseling. That's when I asked her, where do I go? She said, I don't know. We have another caller, so let me just make room for that caller. Hello, welcome to the Heart of the Matter with Dr. Marjorie. This is HEG Radio. You're live.
Thank you. I was just listening to what Dr. Margie had said to the previous caller, and that was so helpful about narcissism. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Dr. Margie. I was just impressed with that, and my question is, you had said about observing and not responding when you're dealing with a narcissistic person. That I think is really helpful. My question is, I'm related to the spouse of the narcissistic person, and I feel so badly for the spouse, and the spouse is not a believer, and I'm wondering if you have any advice for me in how I can best help the spouse in the situation.
That's a really good question. In fact, let me first of all say this, and if I forget what you said, I'll ask you to repeat it. But before I go there, I want to say so often I get stopped in the grocery store or at church, and people say, "You got to see my son. He's a mess," or "My husband he's out of control, and you got to see my husband." And can I get my nephew's wife to come see you? Everybody has somebody that's cracking up, and they want me to see them. And so what I want to say to that is I only see people who want to be seen, who want to come to counseling. You can't make someone go to counseling. Those are the worst those are the worst scenarios possible when somebody doesn't want to be there. In fact, in the state of California, they have court-ordered counseling sessions for some offenders, and I don't take those because I want the people coming to me wanting to come. Okay, that said, when you're talking about the person that who's married to a narcissist, um, first of all, they may be in such a place that they don't even know what's going on and that they are married to a narcissist. So what you present to them has to be presented in a very careful way. Are you happy? How are things going? What kind of stressor are you under with your spouse? Very carefully asking those kinds of questions, and if they seem to be interested in getting some sort of help for that, then you approach them about counseling. Am I answering your question?
Yes, actually, and I've had. Oh, I put you on speaker. Let me take it. Yes, I've had those conversations, and it's my brother. My brother's wife is who I think is probably a narcissist,
Mhm.
but with my brother, and he is very aware that there's things going on, and I'm wondering, giving him the names Meredith Miller and Lisa Romano, um, is that even a step, or I don't know what the next step is to take. He's told me that the family's miserable and they tried counseling, and the narcissist, we'll just say the narcissistic spouse, whether or not she really is, um, will not go back because things were pointed out that she might need to do change.
Yeah.
So would YouTube be a place to go, or should I just leave it alone?
Possibly. You might frame it this way. Um, I I have access to something that I think is really interesting. I've really enjoyed watching these videos. Maybe you would like to watch these videos as well. Why don't you give it a try and
Ah.
see what you think? always when you approach someone from the standpoint of, "This is something that I think is really interesting," or, "This is something that's really helped me, maybe you would be interested," rather than saying, "Hey, you know what? You gotta listen to this." It's much less
That
threatening
is so helpful.
when you come at it from the position of, "This is something that I thought was very helpful, and maybe you would find some interest in this too. Just give it a try and see what you think, and let's talk about this."
Cool. That answers my question. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Well, thank you for calling. I appreciate your question.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
We have time just for one more caller. The number to call, it's WhatsApp 825-343-4486. You have to get that call in quickly. 825-343-4486. The doctor is in to help with your mental health issues. Yes, Dr. Marjorie. So we were talking about the fact that I needed, I'm going to call it a refreshers in January because of the little things that I was going through, um,
You
and
know
the fact
that
that you were,
um, that was an interesting time, Denise. Um, my practice ebbs and flows. Sometimes I am just so packed, I have no room for I can't even think straight because so many people are coming unglued at the same time, and then it kinda evens out. And I have time to garden, and I have time to catch my breath, and then it speeds up again. And that time when the storms were coming through Sacramento, it was, kind of like with COVID, people were feeling oppression. They were feeling oppressed because of the weather, they were oppressed because they couldn't go out and socialize. There were so many restrictions that people felt they had time to slow down perhaps and actually think about their mental state and what was going on in their lives. And you were not alone. The storms triggered something really profound in a lot of people, and they needed just to get out of the house. Or I do Zoom sessions as well, just to talk and kind of touch base, like you said, and make sure that somebody was going to hear them and could give them some structure during that time until the storms passed.
well, Dr. Marjorie, we're about that time. It's 1 p.m.
All right.
I'd intended for us to do half an hour today. I didn't know the reception would have been this great on the first day.
It
You
was
know,
great fun. I loved it, Denise.
want to thank you for coming on and for sharing with us in the heart of the matter and for, speaking to the people, the listeners, the co-drivers, I call them, because we're all co-laborers in the vineyard.
Yes.
We will do this again for sure next week, Tuesday.
Good. I'll be
Get
here.
questions ready. Get ready to call and to speak to the doctor because she will be in next Tuesday. Dr. Margie, I want to thank you again for coming on and for sharing with us into the heart of the matter. Do you have any last words for us, or do you want to pray over the people? I don't know what you want to do to close out today.
I would love to pray for the people. Can we do that?
Yes, go right ahead, please.
Father God, I thank you. The need is so great. I just thank you for this opportunity to speak life into people, to remind them that they are daughters and sons of the Most High King. Father, if there's anything more that I can do to speak life and to educate people, then use me, Father. Prepare me ahead of time. And I thank you for Denise and this program, this ministry that is hitting so many people across the airwaves. I thank you. I ask you to bless her. I ask you to bless the audience and just pour your favor out on all the nations, all the people listening. Bless them with peace. You are Jehovah Shalom, the God of peace, with nothing broken and nothing missing. We worship you. We give you praise for this most beautiful day. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. Thank you again, Dr. Marjorie. I'll see you Blessed greetings to you, Servant David. Also, good afternoon to Andrea Jones, Merlin Joseph, watching on YouTube, all the persons watching on YouTube, on Facebook, on the different platforms and media, and to all the persons who are listening on HEG Radio. Want to say good afternoon to you. Want to welcome all the new persons. Patrick Watson, that's your name. Servant David Show is actually Patrick Watson. Thank you for tuning in. We continue the broadcast on HGG Radio. So I'm asking all the persons who are on YouTube and Facebook to log in now to hggradio.ca, where we will continue with the higher drive when we say goodbye to Dr. Marjorie. Have a blessed day, Doc.
Shalom.
Shalom.